Here we are, and it's time to assemble this awesome kit that we took a look at in the last video. First up, it's time to deal with the tuners, get those on the headstock. We got these nice vintage style tuners. I'm gonna put in the bushings now because that should kind of help stabilize these as I put the tuners in. It should help prevent a little bit of movement. Just kind of get these in. These are held together with screws in between. So we are going to screw each end, and we're going to drill holes and put screws between each. So one screw will press down between both here. And I've got these laid out pretty nicely with these specific pieces on the ends. Notice these are unique. These are more squared, but then these have a decorative end where a screw also goes. Using a straight edge, we want to make sure it's all lined up so that these are pressed firmly together. I want to mark where I'm going to drill these holes. All right. You should be able to see the marks in between. A portion of the screw first goes through the tuner, and then only a little bit goes into the wood. When we pre-drill these holes, we're going pretty shallow. We mainly really want to avoid drilling through the headstock. I want to be super careful, and at this point, I'm just drilling very slightly. Try to go nice and straight. The first few times you drill through a headstock, it's pretty nerve-wracking. We want to screw these in by hand. We're not using a power drill at this point because if you use a power drill, you'll probably strip the wood. I'm going to start on one end and go right through, and that should kind of help align things as I go. And first I'm putting the screws in about halfway, and then I'm going to go back and tighten them all after. This is looking good though. I do like these tuners. These will feel loose until you get them secured all the way. I put a set of locking tuners like this from TWT on my Squire Mini at home. It does look pretty sweet, and it actually stays in tune really nicely. Yeah, all right, this is good. I am digging it. Now it's time to install the trem claw. And this goes inside. We want to install it so that it's kind of symmetrical here, right in the center. And we do need to drill holes into the body. We want the holes to be parallel with the body as much as possible. So in order to do that, I've got a really long drill bit. So basically I've got a drill bit, but I have an extension. This is a 12-inch extension. And that'll give us a really kind of shallow angle here. You can buy a foot-long 1/8 inch drill bit, or you can buy an extension to use other drill bits. Just make sure it's all compatible. I am marking this out. Now I'm using the cloth to protect the body. We do not want the drill bit to rub up directly against the cloth because this could wrap around and get tangled and it could cause some injury. Plus you'll ruin some stuff. So I'm gonna just put some cardboard under it as an extra barrier. Slowly and carefully, you could potentially get a pilot hole started too, but I'm gonna go for it like this. I also want to run it parallel this way because we don't want this tilted in or out because then the hole's not going to be straight, which will apply pressure as you tighten the screw, and then eventually you won't be able to tighten it anymore without damaging the claw. There we go. I'm only going to screw these in part way because later we'll see how deep they need to go just to kind of get the tension right on the springs. Notice I'm doing this by hand. Really, when I'm dealing with something like this, a guitar, delicate wood, I don't want to ruin any of the holes or strip anything out, so I'm really doing a lot of this by hand. Just got to be patient. I'm looking and there is enough clearance here so that when I put the back plate on, which will also have to be drilled out, this will totally fit without pressing up against the claw. Of course, you've seen this 1,000 times before, but I'm definitely oiling this above the nut and below the nut. You can see how quickly that's getting soaked in. Don't forget the sides as well, near the fret markers and on the bottom side. Yeah. Next, I'm going to bolt on the neck, and the purpose of that is because that's going to help us align the bridge to make sure everything is on properly. And the holes are pre-drilled, as mentioned in the previous video. Lining up the neck plate, I've got the neck in the pocket. I like to use a bar of soap and apply a little bit of soap on the threads of the screws. This should help kind of lubricate the threads as they go through. Even Fender recommends this. Making a mess. So we're going to put these in, kind of feel it out. They should kind of drop in through the body, and you're really going to start feeling more resistance once the tip of the screw reaches the neck itself. Definitely use the right size screwdriver. It is going on pretty well, so this feels like it's lined up and drilled nicely. Good. Snug it down. It's kind of telling me when to stop, so I'm not forcing it. As the screws get seated in the recesses here on the plate, it does pretty much stop on its own. All right, this is looking like a guitar. We have ourselves the bridge. Some nice vintage looking saddles. I want to place some cardboard, it's fairly thick, right behind the block. And that's just to make sure that I don't go too tight up against the wood, because if I do kind of force the block here, if we press it in here, there's not going to be any movement to move the trem back and forth. We really want it to be able to move in both directions a little bit. So I did put down some masking tape here, and I'm going to use that so I can make some markings on the body without indenting it with a pencil, or you know, just I can peel this off instead of trying to erase later. All right, I'm coming in right along the edge of the neck and making sure it is firm. Nice and sharp pencil too. Okay, same thing on this side. Notice we have a larger gap here than on this side, and that's of course for the whammy bar or the trem. So the block itself, or the bridge itself, is bigger on that side, so the hole is larger. And so I'm resting this in, and I kind of want to center it between those lines. And I'm also looking so that when the string comes up over the saddle, I want to make sure it looks like it's kind of equal spacing on both sides. So this will kind of help determine where to place the bridge. I am going to mark this out. I'm tracing with the pencil onto the tape the 6 holes for the trem. And looking at it, the 2 center holes line up nicely right down the center of the routing marks. And then those, they do appear to line up with the markers, the dot markers. So I think we're good. I guess we're gonna find out once we string it up. So now, here's the thing. I'm gonna be using this block. I want this to guide the drill bit so that it's at a perfect 90-degree angle. If this is not at a perfect 90-degree angle, there's going to be kind of friction up against the edge of one or more of these holes on the bridge. So as you try to use the trem, it's going to get stuck. So we want the holes really centered into the holes here, and The screws will then be centered, and basically it should help the thing kind of move nicely. In order to do that, I'm first going to drill some very tiny pilot holes with the smallest drill bit. And then as I line this up, I'll be able to kind of feel where all the holes go and then go straight through. If I were to just start drilling through here, I can't really see to know that it's lined up perfectly. Plus a pilot hole is helpful anyway. So this should be nicely centered. I'm actually using the block here to set the depth. So once I get this, the amount that this is sticking out the bottom is actually just about what I want for the depth of the hole. There we go. So far so good. 5 more to go. Nice. The holes in the wood line up with the holes in the bridge. I'm going to put some soap on these too. Now here's how you screw this down. Right down until they're almost seated. And here's the thing, I like to hold, and then once I feel right here, so once I feel that the screw is kind of lifting up the back side of the bridge that my hand is pressing down on, then you back it off until it doesn't have any pressure, and then a quarter turn. So we're going to do that with all of these. You can see it there, watch. So boom, it pops up, and watch as I loosen it. The bridge settles back down. Yep, pops up, settle it back down. Very good. I'm not a big fan of this flopping around, so I'm gonna go ahead and actually pop a spring on. Okay, so this is going to help keep this in place so it's not annoying. I'm just going to attach the 2 strap buttons, so use a screwdriver. It's pre-drilled, so I'm just going to screw them in. This is probably one of the best parts. Just for the fit, let's see. Look at that. Beautiful. So I've marked my bit again to kind of guide the depth. And now I've got this lined up, especially looking at the bridge. I want to determine the exact spacing because it would bug me if it looked a little cockeyed or a little weird here at the bridge. The neck is lined up nicely. All the electronics are in place. Everything seems to align here as well, where the pickups and the bridge, you know, the strings will pass over properly. So I'm going to drill down through, centering each of these. You can also tap these with a punch or with a scribe or something. You can kind of use a hammer and tap each of these to indicate where the holes go and then drill them out once the pickguard is removed. But I'm just going to drill carefully so I don't damage the pickguard. All right, I've got this drilled, sawdust everywhere. I am going to remove all this, get rid of the sawdust, hook up the electronics, And then we're going to put the pickguard back in and screw it down. When we put this back in, this is the ground wire for the bridge. So we're going to route this through so that it comes out on the backside, and then we send this through to hook it up with the jack plate. So we want everything to be where it belongs. You can go through and use copper tape and shield this. It's recommended to do some kind of shielding, so either copper tape or shielding paint, which I'll do at a later date. I'm feeding the ground through. And all right, so these are lined up. Dropping this back in. Connecting these quick connects. I've got red on red, pretty easy. Nice. We're going to kind of coil up the extra, put it there. Holding the pickguard because it's not secure. Ooh, okay, I've got plenty of extra here, so I'm just going to pull this green wire through. This will get soldered to the claw to ground out the guitar. I think I can spare you the time here, but since I've drilled out the holes for the pickguard, I'm going to put these in by hand rather than using the drill. I've got the pickguard screws mostly in, so I'm just going to finish that. I'm also going to mark and drill out the holes for the jack. I'm doing that with a cable plugged in because I want to make sure there's room here. So I'm going to kind of, with this plugged in, I'm moving it around so it's not forcing the end of the plug right up against the wood. All right. Look at this. So we are going to need to do a few things to finish this off. This needs to be soldered, which is a pretty simple solder joint, just one joint on the whole thing. We will do the same process for marking out and drilling the holes for the cover plate. And I would add 2 more springs, so I'm going to do that. This is going to need some more tension, so we'll do that once we've got strings. When you line up the back plate, stand up and look through. You want these holes to line up with the string holes in the block so that when you're restringing, you can do it through the plate. I've got everything on. For the most part, I do need to string it up. Last but not least, I'm going to drill and install a string tree, or maybe 2, at the headstock. I look forward to tuning it up and taking it for a spin.